In the quiet shadows of the dark lives 1,000 masked vigilantes, each a master of his universe, fighting unimaginable powers of evil and sweeping away evil from the streets of corrupted cities. All this while, they carry the burden of a troubled past, a painful present, and a future clouded in uncertainty. Not all superhero flicks get the limelight they deserve. Spiderman, Batman, these names have been around for decades, but some get lost in poor marketing, box office bombs, or are overshadowed by other superhero films released around the same time. So brace up, because today we bring 12 iconic superhero films that have faded into oblivion, but were actually hidden gems. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Phantom, 1996. The Phantom is the descendant of a long line of superheroes spanning 400 years. But it's not just the legacy of justice that hangs heavy over this young man's shoulders. He carries the burden of a troubled past where a young boy had helplessly watched his father being killed by the vicious Singh Brotherhood. The boy was then washed ashore on the Asian island of Bengala, where he dedicated his life and lineage to fight against cruelty, greed, and piracy. This was back in the 16th century. Fast forward to modern times. The world believes in the immortal superhero, the Ghost Who Walks. He must travel to New York City to stop a wealthy, evil business person from laying his hands on the 3 magic skulls that hold the secret to ultimate power, immortality. But here's the catch. A 4th skull controls the other 3, and only the Phantom knows this. He wears it as his magic ring and uses it to retrograde the powers of the other 3. So you see, the Phantom wasn't bitten by a spider or came from an extraterrestrial planet. He is an ordinary crime fighter who has sharpened his skills over generations of training, living up to the fateful name and ensuring that the successor becomes worthy of the crown. Starring Billy Zane in the lead role, the film is a classic superhero tale based on Lee Falk's comic strip The Phantom. Rumor has it that Billy used to run out of the set to buy sushi in his Phantom attire. I think by the late 90s, we were beginning to get a pulp hero fatigue, with characters like Batman, Dick Tracy, the Shadow, Darkman, and the Rocketeer already making it to the hearts of fans. Society was beginning to be receptive to the modern high-action anti-hero, leaving the Phantom practically no edge. But this PG-13 old-fashioned film has gained a cult following over the years, which makes the Phantom immortal, much like its iconic hero. Darkman, 1990. Peyton Westlake is a genius scientist working on skin grafting, but the artificial skin he's developed is far from perfect, as it breaks down after 99 minutes. His hot girlfriend, Julie, is a lawyer, and she has laid her hands on some incriminating documents about a guy she was investigating. She leaves these at Peyton's house. One night, the lights go out, and our crazy scientist discovers that light is the only thing standing in the way of his pet project. Dramatically, at that very moment, the psychotic criminal Robert Durant arrives on the scene, demanding Julie's documents. Peyton is beaten to a pulp before being burnt alive as they blow up his lab. Peyton, however, had miraculously survived the feat and emerged with a new superpower, but no one knew this. He now has the deadly combination of inhuman strength and a scary temper, which makes him almost invincible. Moreover, he's picked up his passion project, a technology he uses on himself and to get back at the bad guys who did him wrong. Liam Neeson did a fantastic job giving life to the character of a mad scientist gone rogue. He went to the extent of meeting actual accident victims of severe disfigurement and learnt about their difficulty in reintegrating into society. As for the cinematography, the FX could have been better, and there are cheesy lines, like Frances McDormand saying, "If you're not going to kill me, I have things to do." However, Sam Raimi's original stands apart from generic adaptations where creativity is thrown out the window. Just think of the pink elephant scene, for instance. A fan once said this about the scene: "You have 3 screams, one of pain, horror, and rage. Those who know, they know. If you don't, watch it today and you're surely in for a ride." The Shadow, 1994. The story begins shortly after the First World War, when the terrifyingly cruel drug kingpin Ying Ko, who is actually Lamont Cranston, is abducted by the holy Tulku in the opium fields of Tibet in order to remove evil from his heart. Tulku stabs him with the powerful dagger of Furba, after which he accepts Tulku's tutelage and masters the art of hypnotism and invisibility. When he comes back to New York City after 7 years, a new superhero named the Shadow is born. The fact that the wealthy playboy Lamont Cranston moonlights as the mysterious vigilante is not known to people. As for the people he rescued, they've all become his agents. As the Shadow, played by Alec Baldwin, is pitted against his arch-enemy Shiwan Khan, we are reminded of the popular 1930s pulp fiction and radio drama series on which the film is based. Shiwan Khan has explosive plans for the city, and he plans on achieving world domination by holding the city ransom with an atomic bomb. The Shadow's powers are called into action, and the world's fate now depends on his prowess. When the film failed to reach the mark, fans speculated it was a ripoff of Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. But the truth is, the Shadow has been around since the 30s, as we've just established. The visual creativity looks inspired by Michael Calta of DC's take on the character, but even then, I think the Shadow was way better than anyone's Batman. I know that's a bold statement, but hear me out. There's a deeper origin story, an interesting female lead, and a more complex hero who doesn't fall into the stereotypical dichotomy of pure good versus evil. A 10 out of 10 movie, don't you think? The Punisher, 1989. The Punisher. The name should send chills down your spine. He is the most mysterious and most wanted vigilante the city has ever known. Sources say that he's gotten at least 125 people murdered in the last half-decade. But who is this unnamed one-person army fighting against criminal despotism in the city? Frank Castle was an ex-cop who lost his family to mob violence, but no one knows that he's still alive, striking back from the myth of his grave, exacting revenge upon mobsters whenever he finds them. While he successfully cut down on evil from proliferating and weakened the nexus of criminal families, he also gained some dangerous enemies who hate him to their guts. They have united under Gianni Franco, the leader of the criminal syndicate, but not without interference from Yakuza, a powerful rival syndicate from Asia. While Yakuza plans to take over these families, the Punisher must save the children of families he has fought against all these years. To his aid is the same man who killed his family. Painful and visually dark, Dolph Lundgren plays the comic book character with full grit. You have all the right ingredients to make it a blockbuster: Dolph, dead bodies, and Daniel Day-Lewis. The action and thrill brutally keep you on edge. Some ninjas and people explode into pieces. As for the Punisher, he doesn't care if he lives or dies as long as justice is served right. But Stan Lee hated it, and why not, given that the film never uses the Punisher's iconic skull logo. The modest budget also meant big names like Sylvester Stallone wouldn't be roped in for the hero. The Punisher films have always retained a cult following that loves Frank's selfless sacrifice and hunger for justice in a corrupt place. ManThing, 2005. Kyle Williams is now posted at Bywater as a replacement for the missing sheriff. Deputy Fraser said that at least 47 other people were reported missing in the area. Soon, the oil tycoon Fred Schist calls the new sheriff to cut down schoolteacher Terry Richards' protests in his company. Now, Schist is a shady guy who also claims that Indian Ted Salas had completely disappeared with the money shortly after Schist bought the local sacred land of Darkwaters from Ted. To make matters more complicated, a man called Rene LaRocque is accused of sabotaging the entire facility. Kyle starts looking for LaRocque while getting close to Terry. It's not long before he realizes that something mysterious awaits him in the swamp, protecting the dark waters from encroachment. First of all, kudos to the studio for giving human form to one of the most complicated inhuman entities ever. Secondly, most people did not know that the swamp's deadly creature is a classic Marvel character. That and the fact that many people didn't like the nudity and gore in the film overshadow the fact that the horror was top-notch, neither overplayed nor underplayed. Seeing more of Kyle and Terry romancing their way into the swamp would have been nice. On that note, when the duo enters the dark waters, the cinematography demands applause. Long branches, twisted trees, and moss dripping off everything. Moreover, the film comes with a message where Schist and his cronies embody environmental destruction, making him the real villain. As for the superhero, if you haven't guessed it it yet, go check out the film. The Green Hornet, 2011. Son of a rich and influential man, Britt is a bratty playboy whiling away his time at parties. But when his father, James Reed, dies, Britt inherits his newspaper and becomes the new publisher of the Daily Sentinel. Britt also meets Kato, his father's chauffeur, who is highly skilled in kung fu. Pissed at his dead father, Britt puts out his anger on a graveyard statue, and at the same time, he saves a young couple from some rowdy thugs. But TV reports this incident as vandalism instead of heroism. So that sparks the idea of a masked superhero named the Green Hornet and his sidekick. Britt uses the newspaper to promote the sensation who this new mysterious guy is. But things aren't all that flowery when it's not only the city police, but also the real crime boss of the city who is after him. Escaping Chudnovsky is not child's play. Then there's Kato, who has all the skills but none of the recognition, and it's not fair that he suffers in silence. Add to this the sizzling Lenore, Britt's assistant, whom everyone tries to hit on. No, this wasn't an original storyline, given that Van Williams and Bruce Lee had already given life to the superheroes in 1966. The legacy of a stellar past leaves fans dissatisfied. There will always be people who won't like remakes simply because the classics that came before them have created a benchmark that very few would surpass. Seth Rogen's direction was delivered, and unlike his other works, this one doesn't have his notorious trademark of crude humor. Moreover, in their green and black clothes, Seth Rogen and Jay Chou deliver kick-ass performances for which fans remember them even today. Sky High, 2005. Will Stronghold carries the legacy of superhero strength in his blood. Son to Steve and Josie, also known as the incredibly strong, seemingly invulnerable commander and the high-speed flying Jetstream. But right now, Steve has no clue if he has his powers. Naturally, this isn't a conversation he's ready to have with his parents, who expect him to be the best. Sky High is the first ever high school situated high up in the clouds, dedicated to teaching kids with superpowers as they go through their crime-fighting puberty. For Will and his best friend Layla, the first day of the secret school can be pretty overwhelming, and Will fears that he'll at best grow up to be a sidekick without any actual superpowers. But that's the thing with hidden strengths. It comes out at unexpected turns in life. Will is destined for greatness, but that's only if he can learn what it takes to be loyal to his teammates. Kurt Russell's over-the-top performance as an accomplished superhero, with Kelly Preston as his flying superhero wife, make his son's struggling journey even more interesting. This is one of those movies that anyone can watch at any age. With some cool plot twists, a couple of good laughs for all, and a nice little message for kids, Sky High is like those sweet treats we munch on now and then. Push, 2009. Based in Hong Kong, the film centers on a bunch of superheroes who have extraordinary telepathic and telekinetic powers. They team up against a government agency for the latter's misuse of a powerful drug that would create an army of super soldiers that the state would control. So we have the Mover, Nick Grant, the Watcher, Cassie Holmes, and the Pusher, Kira Hawleys. Kira has escaped the shady government agency that hunts down young people who are gifted with superpowers. So Cassie contacts Nick to track down Kira, but once the trio meets, they join the fellow youngsters, united in their mission against the evil intentions of the state. As Henry Carver, a powerful pusher, and his men come down heavily on the kids, they have no choice but to push their limits and fight back with all of their might. Mostly dystopian, partly superhero, borderline supernatural, Push brings an eclectic group of characters who unite or contest with each other. Yes, the plot can seem a little complicated, with multiple narrative threads tying more knots than they're untying. But you're not supposed to exercise your brain cells like this is quantum physics. Just enjoy the crazy color palettes and the amazing art direction as the characters chase a suitcase that everyone wants. Nick's story is rooted in mystery, action, and loss. The film goes out of its way to depict the downside of having superpowers when the villain is not a petty thief, but the state itself. Super 2010. As a fry cook, Frank Darbo is quite an unlucky guy whose wife, Sarah, dumps him for a drug dealer named Jacques. What has Frank not done to get her back? He officially reports her as kidnapped and even tries to get her out of Jacques' car, crying like a sore loser. It all changes when he has a vision after watching Christian TV. Sewing a costume and gathering a pipe wrench as his weapon, he resolves to look out for criminal activity and stop it from spreading its evil claws. Thus, a superhero is born. But he has his fair share of woes even as a secret vigilante, one of which is his extremely flawed sense of boundaries. Meanwhile, the cops list him as wanted simply because they can't lay their hands on him, and Jacques' gang is equipped with deadly guns. With Libby, the comic book store clerk, on his side, Frank has a huge task at hand. He has to save Sarah. Critics bashed it, calling it emotionally hollow, and most fans were equally disappointed. 2 rape scenes in a single movie feels really over the top, but then you have to realize that Super is more than just a hateful film. The central premise here is that Rainn Wilson, the actor playing the superhero, was hunting for purpose after living a meaningless life for the longest time. You can't help but feel empathy for him because he has his heart in the right place. People say that James Gunn was just unlucky with the release of Kick-Ass around the same time, but I think dark comedy and deadpan humor aren't everyone's cup of tea, and that's most likely why the film failed to impress anyone but a cult following, who appreciate this kind of superhero against the likes of Avengers.
This is a job for Condor Man!
Condor Man, 1981. Woody is a cartoonist and author of a comic book hero, Condor Man, a high-ranking American agent. But he would write about only what happens in the real world. As Woody tries out a flying apparatus for his character, he becomes the code-named winged creature he created. All is fine until he meets a pretty Russian girl named Natalia in Istanbul. Eventually, Natalia turns out to be a secret Soviet spy, posing as an innocent civilian. Ultimately, it's up to Woody to save Natalia from the evil clutches of her 2 mortal enemies, Krakow and Morovich. The cult following the film has gained over the years owes its success to the cool costumes and the breathtaking scenery. There's fun, romance, and adventure in perfect proportions, but fans saw it as Disney trying to make a Bond movie. Disney was everywhere back in the day, and we were beginning to get sick of it. Disney couldn't compete with the release of Roger Moore's 5th 007 installment, For Your Eyes Only, the same year. The funniest part is that Condor Man is way better than most Bond movies, so it's a shame that Disney hasn't picked up the loose ends and revamped the superhero for a sequel. Mercury Man, 2006. Playing with fire was a part of his profession, so when our average fireman accidentally comes across a mysterious substance, he transforms into the invincible Mercury Man. He is now a walking heat source. He was always a good guy, always on the right side of accidents and events, so when he finally gets his hand on a bunch of superpowers, he channels his abilities in a face-off against the bad guys and their wrongdoings. The source of Chan the firefighter's extra-human strength is rooted in the ancient legend of an indestructible power created by the coming together of the 2 holy forces of lunar Mercury and solar Mercury. An international terrorist named Osama has researched this old tale and now plans to end the world once and for all. Can the accidental protege of the solar Mercury stop Osama and save the planet from destruction and doom? There's no doubt that the character of Osama was based on bin Laden. In the film, Osama is given a distinct origin story of his own, where his innocent family is riddled with US bullets. No wonder this movie doesn't sit well with middle-class American sensibilities if you're asking an already hysterical audience to sympathize with the terrorist. That being said, you can't take the limelight away from Chan, because this is his story, and Thai actor Wasan Kantao looks quite the snack in his muscled suit and the over-the-top action. Critics have failed to recognize that at the heart of it, this superhero flick is about a hard-working fireman's faith towards goodness and virtue, and that makes it an underrated gem from the 2000s. An era when the world was preparing for massive superhero blockbusters. The Meteor Man, 1993. When the streets of a Washington, D.C. neighborhood face the terrors of a menacing drug gang, a high school teacher named Jefferson Reed decides to step up and save his home. This is all because a souped-up chunk of meteor rains down and hits him in the chest, lending him superhuman abilities, but ironically, this so-called superhero can fly through the skies even though he's death-scared of heights. For barely 30 seconds, he can retain any information he absorbs from a book. His backbone? It's stronger than Steel. So now he has no choice but to go to his family and friends and emerge as a force of goodness against the dreaded Golden Lords. So he suits up in a piece of homemade spandex and fights off the threats using wit, cunning, and prowess. It's so odd that this film didn't work. I mean, you have Blank Man versus Meteor Man. What more do you need? Just raise a good budget and make a film already. It would make Gen Z go batshit crazy, almost like that time when Batman vs. Superman was released. This film is pretty watchable, even though the FX are dated, and Robert Townsend was single-handedly trying to pull this off through his character of Jefferson Reed. History may have forgotten the graying black superhero costume, but fans haven't, making it one of the most memorable superhero films ever. Marvelous verdict. These films may not be your Hollywood blockbusters. Still, these superheroes have retained a faithful cult following even after so many years since their release, despite so many reasons to shove them into obscurity. With the rise of the MCU, superhero films have remained at the forefront of pop culture for quite some time now. Every year, you'll find at least one naive guy with a sad story having to bulk up and step into a costume to fight against crime, leaving the police baffled while his mask protects his original identity. This is the staple of almost every superhero film. What makes a film stand apart is the quality of experience the audience is getting. We don't mind a good ripoff or an extremely original plot that completely revolutionizes the genre. Fans crave a simple but believable plotline, a decent cast, a well-fitted costume donned by a handsome hunk, some hot babes, and killer action. And these films not only deliver, but they slay. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.